All right, I'd like to welcome everyone to our city council meeting for our work meeting for Wednesday, August 26, 2020. Just so that for the record, this meeting is being conducted electronically, and it's also be seen at www.herriman.org/agenda and minutes. We here at the City Hall are following the CDC guidelines as well as the requests by the county to maintain our social distance and wear masks. So I will be wearing a mask throughout this meeting to comply with those requests. All right, we will go on to our first item, which is item 1.1, review of this evening's agenda. Are there any items we need to make changes to? No, looks like we don't need to make any changes tonight. Item 1.2, are there any future agenda items that the council members would like to have added?
I have a couple of questions, Mayor. I had somebody ask me about the ordinance that restricts the roof pitch to 512, and thinking that maybe it's time to revisit those ordinances because they're design guidelines more than anything, and some of the more modern contemporary kind of design guidelines would move away from that. And so I don't know if that's a future agenda item, but maybe something to look at. And then also the property that the city owns by the city hall, what are we doing that? How are we getting some economic development going on that? Or what's the status of the property around the city hall that we are in possession of? I'd like to know where we're sitting with that and what we're doing as far as economic development on that.
Fantastic. I can have staff.
So I'm unclear about the ordinance that you were asking to review, because we're actually going through all of our ordinance, through all the titles. So if you can refresh.
So specifically, I think she's referring, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sherry, the ordinance that requires a roof pitch to be 512, 5/12?
Yeah.
So that would be the roof pitch designation and ordinance, which would something that normally is something that comes up in planning stages.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, I've just had a few complaints about it, and so just maybe it's time to relook at it and just why I think I know why it was initially put in, but maybe we've outgrown it as far as the designs and things like that from some of the new modern style housing. We're end up having to do variances, and I'd rather not do that.
Okay, it's been duly noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Clint or Steve or Jared, do you have any items that you would like added to a future agenda? Okay. Steve has one.
I have one slight technical issue, so give me just a second here.
Is it construction workers?
No, it's not this time. This is just tech issues with my computer here. So I do have two things. I'll just try and take care of it this way if you guys can hear me. I'd like to know a little bit about our RFP process, and specifically what our minimum amount is to request to put something out for RFP versus just paying for it. And what is our threshold for requiring more than one signature to issue a check? And then I'll have some follow-up questions once I get those kind of established, but I'd like to discuss that at a further in depth at a future meeting.
Fantastic.
That's pretty simple. Actually, it takes quite a bit to get a check cut in the city, but your other question about the RFP process, it's very defined in our ordinance, so we actually sent that out to you all to review that, our procedures on that. Some is driven by state statute, and then our thresholds are driven by our own policy. So we'll get that in front of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jared, by chance, go ahead.
Yeah, I got it. We've been talking a lot, off and on over the last, I don't know, year and a half or so about changing our ordinances to promote more single family or increase some of the requirements on multifamily or high density. So I'd like to officially ask that to put on the council's agenda to look at those ordinances. And then the second thing, I got an email back the end of June regarding the elevation of Midas Creek Villas versus the neighborhood next to it. I sent it on to staff. Never got anything back on it. and would like to take a look at that. I took a drive over there, and it's pretty shocking. Like the road right next to these people's homes is elevated way over the top of the fence line.
Okay, we've written that down. I'm just trying to place that.
That's the road that was really high compared to the
I got that
fences.
part, but the actual location.
The Midas Creek Villa.
Over Miller Crossing.
Okay.
All right. Any other items?
I just had one quick thing. I know we talked, I actually believe it was our last council meeting, not our last work meeting, just about funding priorities for transportation infrastructure if the state was going to go out for bonding. Did we ever formally, put anything in letter form or anything to represent our desires to be able to pass that on to our legislators so that they knew our viewpoints as they consider those potentially in special sessions?
Great question, because we were perplexed about that. We had the discussion about that, and we never got any clear direction by council what to do with it.
I hadn't
I'll
received
just
any.
say, I for one would like to, I felt like we were pretty much in agreement as a council that night as we discussed it, that obviously we would like to see the legislature put some more money towards transportation infrastructure out in our area should they go out to bonding. So if that is if I understood that correctly, I would like to request that we actually put that in a letter format from the city and the council to be able to distribute to each of our legislative representatives up there so that they have that information as they consider that option moving forward.
I'm in agreement with that.
If we can see some nods on that, we'll get that letter cut and get your signatures on it.
Seeing
Get it
nods from
going.
Sherry and
Okay,
Stephen.
I got enough. Thank you.
I had a question on that one that still hasn't been answered. One, is there anything official from the legislature stating what this is? I've talked to Mayor Staggs and others, and nobody knows anything about it. Second is, if they were to go to bond, would this increase taxes, or would it be under current levels? And then three, what priority? Brett sent us kind of an email from himself listing some items, but there's nothing from any of our legislators. There's nothing stating what the plan would be, what order projects would be in, etc. I'm a little hesitant to just send a blanket letter off saying we're in support of transportation. I mean, that's easy to do, but are we going to put any detail to it? If so, there's a lot of questions to answer.
Well, my understanding is that I guess the request on our side is if the legislature has that discussion and decides to go out to bond, that they would like to know what the city's priorities are. I don't know that there was specifically a list of my understanding from them as far as what those priorities would be, but other than be able to represent our views as their constituents in the area of being able to lean forward or take a certain position should that discussion of bonding come up. Is that accurate, Brett?
That's very accurate. What we were briefed on and told, it wasn't about the specifics, how it was going to be handled, just if we have an interest in getting funding out in the south end of the valley. That was pretty basic. I know you want questions, you want answers to your questions, Jared, but we'll reach out to them and see if they can answer them.
If it's just a very general letter of, hey, we want some transportation out here, I'm all for it. But if we're going to list specifics, we need to know what the specifics are.
Yeah, again, I agree with you, Jared. Mine was my understanding, or at least my impression of it was a general, just to say, look, if the state is going to go after those, we as at least the elected officials in Herriman want to voice our opinion that some of that money needs to be spent on transportation infrastructure in the Southwest quadrant.
Okay. It sounds like staff has direction on that particular item.
Yeah, that's kind of what happened last time. We got in a discussion about supporting the letter, then we got a discussion about the questions, and so at the end of that, we didn't really get that direction. Hey, get the letter produced.
So are we still with that specifics of asking for those questions to be answered? In addition to that, are we still in support of putting a letter together?
Yeah, we'll get the letter going, and see if we can get answers to those questions you've asked
Okay.
twice now.
All right, thank you. Okay, if there's no further future agenda items, we'll move on to the council leadership task list review.
Okay, I think we're going to get that in front of you on your screen, but we still have the old tour of Beef Hollow, the Staker site, the update council on that. That's on there. And I'm actually going to try to collaborate that with the camp as well. And when we can invite council to attend, it'll be quite a bit of a day to do both. And we're looking at trying to get that done in September. We'll work with General Smith on that, as well as our own team here in the Staker, Travis's last name real quick, Cantrell, on the Staker side, so they know what we're doing up there. So we get that moving. That's going to come up in September. Hopefully the temperatures will drop off a little bit, so it's a little bit more enjoyable tour by then. But the Bonneville Shoreline Study, Bonneville Study, Olympia Hills information, we're still gathering information on that one. Olympia Hills has been working on a new map. We've seen glimpses of it. Doug Young will be approaching council directly, inviting you to share time with him to see what he's producing. And then the numbers they're putting together right now with the road widths and lengths and what's HOA and what's non-HOA, the densities, then we can hand it over to Bonneville and Alan Ray to run the number analysis that you've asked for that item. We talked about the strategy meeting last week. We're going to put that off until a later date whenever council decides to put that together. And the water conservation standards, I believe Justin's on somewhere, maybe. You can answer when that's going to be coming forward to you.
That'll be, so portion of it, I'll be updating on that tonight, Brett.
Great answer. I knew he was talking about water, but I didn't know he was talking about that specifically. Internet service, Sherry brought this up last council meeting. We've actually been working on it for about 6 months, and we're actually going to review some of the proposals we've been working with. Blake, Gordon, Chase, myself have been involved with that a little bit, and we met with Atopia and different vendors and stuff to see what we can do to increase our capacity here in Herriman for our residents and ourselves. And we'll have some ideas, proposals to the council, because a lot of cities are run their own fiber. Do we run fiber to a certain point and go to the towers after that? There's going to be options for you, but they all have a pretty stiff price tag to them, and how we get paid back with your investment. Okay, that's coming for you pretty close. Probably month of September, we should have something for you.
Thank you. Any other questions or by the council?
Just really quick, I was actually thinking today myself about the strategy work meeting. Obviously we last meeting we decided to postpone for a little bit, but obviously in order to have enough time to plan and be effective in that meeting, I don't want to at least go too far down the road before we pick a date. And again, I know we talked about alternate locations to help with distractions, those things. But again, I just want to allow staff plenty of time to plan ahead to be able to have the information that we ask for as a council. So like I said, I just don't want it to get pushed too far down the road for we at least pick a date sometime out in the future to shoot towards.
Yeah, good comment. But our strategy meeting for what we need for staff to start preparing for the budget is going to be in November. Sherry requests we have a conversation about the landscaping and maybe open up the budget for landscape those ponds and maybe looking at getting the fund balance to do that. Prior to that, we'll have to say that's consideration. Does that mean you want to have it specifically for that, to do that? I did raise the question about I'd like to wait until first year before we make that type of decision because of where the finances are going with the city. Because that fund balance is for rainy day fund. We may have to start dipping it for our other expenses right now. But also, I know Blake's been working with some developers out that way. So some of those things might be coming off our list to get things done because it's going to be getting done anyway, maybe next spring. So got a lot of updates coming that way on that particular item. I still want to hold the strategy financial meeting in November with council to give us direction as we see what revenues might be coming in the next fiscal year for capital projects and stuff. And really help you understand, because this is what I don't think has been well known to you all. It's always been on a list, but we're going to break them out. This is stormwater, this is parks, this is water, this is streets, so you understand, and then which one have priorities and which ones are actually competing on for general fund monies and which ones are actually impact fee money and those type of things. So you really understand what's going to hit your general fund as we go into our budget cycle. Was that helpful?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if the council, is the rest of the council is wants to maybe look at the calendar and at least try and look ahead a little bit, knowing the other things that you just mentioned, Brett, that we need to be focusing on, and potentially get a date, on the calendar in another month or something like that. Obviously, we have kids back in school, a lot of different things that are happening. I think that at least if we get something on a calendar now, it gives us plenty of time to see how things continue to play out with kids back in school and all those things surrounding how how we handle with COVID. And again, I feel like if we're able to send our kids to school, and and masks and those types of things, and they do well, that again, we should be able to find time, looking forward a little bit, for us to be able to get together and meet those same conditions for us to be able to have this conversation. Does anybody want to, I know we targeted a Friday before, to try and, open up our calendars. Is anyone wanting to look at trying, at least get something on the calendar out so we can start planning in that direction? What's everyone's thoughts?
Right now, I've got September 18th and September 25th as both open options.
Is that enough? Would that even be enough time for staff? How much time does staff need to
My
put something like this
understanding,
together?
what we heard out of that strategy meeting for council was very little staff. So all we really need is to figure out what agenda you want, what visual or audio things you need, and then we'll look at how many people will be attending, and we'll look at space and who we can work with, one of our partners or ourselves, to accommodate that request. And that could be done in a few weeks if we can. We'll point a couple. It sounds like our part's not going to be as heavy as it normally is, other than location, so logistics, food, and the timeliness and what staff needs to be there for answer some of your questions as you go through your meeting.
I won't be available those 2 weekends. Sorry.
What about,
September's bad.
I've got a few conflicts. What about October 2nd for you, Sherry?
Well, it's the day before the elk hunt, but it's good. I don't have a tag, so we should be good on the 2nd.
I could do the 2nd.
I can do that as well right now.
Jared, do you have any conflicts?
Honestly, it's a crapshoot for me from here on out. It just depends on, we're waiting on COVID results, what events get canceled and what don't, what dates change, etc. So if that works for everyone else, schedule it and I'll do what I can.
Okay, so we're going to give staff direction that we are going to plan to meet together for our strategy session on October 2nd. If staff would be so kind as to work out the details, particularly the logistics on
that
space.
conversation also, I heard that Steve was going to be the mentor during that strategy meeting. And so we'll probably look at him to figure out what his needs are as he wants to walk through that. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, I'm fine with that, and I'll start penciling out a proposed agenda to circulate and have everybody chime in on what they want to do or not want to do. Let's see if we can get something a little more firmly on paper here.
Okay, perfect. If we keep it to council and the recorder, maybe myself and just maybe my leadership team, because they can answer a lot of questions, and probably legal, it could be a pretty smaller space. If we need a bigger space, I know where to go. JATC with Jordan School District has a big room. But here again, we do have to accommodate the public if they choose to attend. So, but it sounds like we could actually probably do it in our Bingham Creek room and to keep it in City Hall unless you want to get off site.
I don't have any problem doing it in City Hall. if that works for staff, because we can control things a little bit more specifically.
Really, the only need, I think, logistically is some whiteboards so we can get some ideas out and some things like that. But outside of that, I don't know that we have a lot of extra needs.
Okay, I'll work with you though directly, Steve, find out what other things you
Okay.
might think of, okay?
Sounds like we have a plan on that.
And are we gonna plan on for a 10-hour day? I didn't get any smiles on that.
I was thinking more 12, 14, just like a typical council meeting,
I mean, at what point do we get overtime?
We'll schedule the day and see what you guys come up with, okay?
All right. Okay, if there's no further items on that task list, we will go ahead and get into the next portion of our meeting, which will be item 2.1, Water Department Updates. Justin Edwards.
All right. Jonathan, I can't see a screen for some reason up here. I don't know if you've shared it yet.
It's being shared.
No, for some reason, it's not showing up on my computer.
We can see it.
All right, there we go. I had it hidden. Okay, so just wanted to go through and kind of give you an update on several things. Obviously, it's been a while since we've kind of given an update, and then go through some of the issues that we've kind of seen in localized areas throughout our city right now, and that is essentially the water pressure issues that I think many of you have heard of in the Cove. We've had a couple others in a couple of other areas as well. And this has been somewhat of an ongoing thing over the years. As our system has grown, certain areas get affected, in different ways, depending on where growth is and those things. So we'll go through a few things. So first slide is kind of giving you an update and a breakdown of kind of how this summer compares to the last 4 summers. So just a breakdown, you can see the number, this top slide, or the top kind of shows you what the water usage is per month, and then a total for the summer. I just looked at May, June, and July. And then the bottom graph kind of gives you an idea of what the meter counts look like over those last years. So kind of give you an idea on our growth and then on our water usage. And yes, this number is 1 billion gallons. And so it's somewhat hard to think that we've used 1 billion gallons in 3 months, but our city's growing. As I went through and looked through this, it was just kind of interesting to see that, our water increase is about 27% since 2017. And interestingly enough, our meter growth is about 27% of growth. So we're not necessarily using a lot more water per household, as kind of what Jordan Valley alluded to, several months ago when they gave their presentation, is we have seen some increase in, water conservation. And that is being shown here, I think, because we've had a high water demand this year, which means, typically you'd see more water, but I think conservation has helped to where that number isn't as high currently as it probably could have been if we haven't seen these water conservation efforts by people. So, I think that's helped. But as you can see, kind of a comparison in the month of July, back in 2017, that was a warm year as well and dry summer. And we actually used then a little bit more water than we did this year. But overall through the summer, you can see we've used, drastically, larger amounts of water this year, which in a lot of cases really, makes our water system struggle. If we see consistent weeks and consistent months worth of high water usage, our water tanks, can store water, but if they don't have a chance to recover, we haven't seen near as many rain events this year either as we typically do. So we're not able to, allow those water tanks to rebound. Even a good summer storm that will put down enough water to make people turn their sprinklers off, that helps us rebound and recapture a couple weeks. So moving on, so I'll just talk a little bit about what we've seen in the Cove now. When I submitted this, it was back on October 14th is when the last time I had data on this page, but we've continued to gather data. You can see the graph is just a little bit hard to see, but this line right through here is 40 PSI. Now that's an important line for us. Under peak day demands, we can't go really, well, the state says that we can't go below 40 PSI, and I'll go into more detail there under peak day demands. And if you can see, those peak day demands are staying above that line. Now the peak hour is these drop down lines when our highest amounts of demand are happening. That's when typically around 6 o'clock in the morning, when the majority of people have their sprinklers turned on. And on that time, our state minimum is 30 PSI, and we've never dropped below that as far as recording goes. Now, there may have been times where people have experienced that, where we have went through and made some adjustments to PRBs for a short period of time, or made some valve adjustments to try and manipulate the system to get water where we need it. And under those circumstances, there may have been a period of time for maybe 20 minutes or a half hour where they did experience some of those. But for the most part, you can see we're staying, above those minimums. And you can see when you really see these dips, that's when you have your sprinklers turned on. And then in the daytime, those come back up to, currently they're about a little above normal because our system is I don't want to say overpressuring, but we're trying to pump as much water as we can, which somewhat inflates that pressure. Now in the wintertime, you would see something that would be a lot more flat, and it would be somewhere up in this range right here, up in the cove, in the 55 PSI range. That's typically where their averages will be on just your typical winter day or non-high demand days. I do want to talk a little bit about the effects of increasing demands. A lot of people, like when they first move into a home and those things, that what they'll see is they'll see increased pressures. Now they're seeing that because the system is designed overall to, at peak demands, be at or above those minimum state pressures. And you can see those down here in the bottom. Like I said, the under peak day demands, 40 PSI, peak hour is 30, and then peak hour plus fired flow demands is 20 PSI. Now those are the state minimums. That's not necessarily where we want to be. We typically like to have our peak day demand minimum. We try and design our system so we're about 45 PSI, so we have a little bit of a buffer there. But early on in development, pressures will be higher in general because you have low demands. As those demands increase and growth happens, the overall system pressure will gradually decrease. And the best way that I could think of to try and describe this is if you have a garden hose and it's pressurized and you poke a hole in it, a little bit of water comes out, you don't have a huge issue. But as you continue to poke holes in that, just like service connections would be or people using, obviously the pressure in that hose will start to diminish, right? And so that is basically how the system is designed, is in the beginning, they'll have higher pressures. As the growth happens and they get closer to build out, they'll get down to where we have this system designed to meet or exceed these minimum pressures during those time periods. So that's why I think that, people are seeing a change in their sprinklers and things like that, is because they've designed their sprinkler systems kind of at the pressure they saw at the time when they moved in. And as the system pressures drop, obviously there's some adjustments there and changes as our system grows. Another thing I wanted to cover was kind of the source and storage and conveyance at build out. As you've seen the maps, and I'll show another one here, the storage and source and conveyance are necessary, or put in places where they're most efficient and fairly strategic to make sure that as the cities grows, we have good coverage over the system as a whole. Now, as the city's growing, what happens there is you create gaps. And those gaps come in areas like this. We have our growth. Now, to feed and continue to grow, we have our sources here and we have other sources down here to the south and north, that as we grow, we'll be able to make those connections. And those connections are important. And what we're seeing now, kind of like transportation, is, you see where roads get over congested, and then when you build another road, it helps relieve that. Similar to the water system is, these connections, we have big open fields through here that the infrastructure needs to make connections on both of these. And then what that does is it allows more sourcing capacity to help feed those demands. So some of the things that we're doing now and have done that through, this summer is, and then some of the things we're looking to do in the future is we're looking at our hydraulic model, which has been, priceless to have. They're a great tool for us to use. And the engineering department, Jonathan in particular, has been great as far as working through this. We've been working through several of our consultants to try and figure out, what could really cause those, lower pressures that we're seeing this year that we really haven't seen in the past. And really, it's just coming down to the large demands that we're seeing. We have made some small adjustments and some things that we've seen, but they haven't made drastic improvements. So some of the things we're doing, we're going to continue to work through those hydraulic model scenarios. We're putting together different plans on how we can, make some improvements and make some connections to improve those pressures. We're also looking into some pressure monitoring devices. We have some now. They have to connect to a hydrant. And so when it comes time to, when it comes into the winter time, we can't have those types of devices on because the hydrants could obviously freeze through the winter. So we're looking at some of the hydrant companies build pressure monitoring systems that can be installed down inside the hydrant. And we're looking into getting some of those. We've already ordered a couple and they should be here shortly to help us just try and monitor the pressures throughout our system. And then we'll talk here just a little more detail on some of the future improvements we're looking at. And then over the last couple of weeks since I've put this presentation together, we've had, a meeting with some of our consultants, and then we have another one scheduled for tomorrow to really nail down into some of these improvements that we're looking at making. So you guys are fairly aware of some of the infrastructure that we're currently in design. This is East Herriman. Real is down here. Mountain View Corridor is in this area. We're looking at building a Zone 2 tank and a Zone 3 tank, a pump station near our existing 1 million gallon tank. And then obviously the important thing is making these connections across to our existing developments. And so those things are in process of being designed. Unfortunately, they won't be online prior to our high demands of next year. We're anticipating, late fall for these improvements to be constructed. We're working with the developers closely to make sure that as this system is installed, that they're making those connections for their development so that obviously we don't want dry, wet tanks sitting out there that can't be utilized. So this is an important project that will help us in the future. Another project that we're looking at, and I think Sherry, we discussed this a little earlier in our, I think it was last week in our community development meeting. This is a very important connection. We have a Jordan Valley connection out here at our Zone 2 5 million gallon tank. And we're looking at making a connection to that line that was installed for Bullfrog, running it down through the future 6400 West alignment and making a connection into Zone 3 pressure zone, our water pressure zone. That is the one that is being hit fairly hard. Zones 4 and 3 are getting hit very hard. So adding more source would help that. And we're looking at that being a priority project to get online prior to this, our watering season next year. And I think that's it on there. So are there any questions before I move on to, I think, some of the Jordan Valley stuff on kind of what we have planned? And like I said, we have other improvements that we're looking at. We just haven't run them through the model yet. Okay. So moving on. So the Jordan Valley contract and the efficiency standards ordinance that needs to be put in place. This was formally adopted, Sherry, as you probably remember, on June 10th by the Jordan Valley Board. And since that time, we've been working internally to try and make sure that these water efficiency standards are put in the correct place in our code. They don't conflict with our current ordinances, and then how we can integrate them into our development standards. We've been working with our consultant who's doing the standards, and they're looking through how and the best place to make those meet and fit into our current standards. And they're also looking into conflicts with our current ordinances, along with our planning team. Michael Malloy, we've had meetings and discussed how best to make it fit there. So we've had a lot of internal meetings on how to make this work well. And then one of the main things is these water efficiency standards need to be adopted by ordinance by city council before we can go before the Jordan Valley Board to increase our water contract. So through the process of those water efficiency standards, working with Alan Packard and the group over at Jordan Valley, basically they gave us till January 1st to be able to have our contract and agreement updated. And that that allows us time to be able to get an ordinance ready for these water efficiency standards. We are somewhat of the guinea pig that will be the first municipality to actually have to adopt this. So there's really no, we are inventing the wheel on this. And so it's difficult. We want to try and do the best to make it right as we move forward. So here's kind of a timeline on what I anticipate happening. We plan on, presenting a draft ordinance and kind of what our contract might look like with Jordan Valley on October 14th. We hope to, if everything looks good, be able to adopt the ordinance on October 28th and then take our agreement to Jordan Valley for their formal board approval on November 12th. So that's kind of our timeline that we're looking at. We wanted to make sure that we weren't pushing it towards the end of the year because I know that, council meetings and board meetings sometimes in those holiday months get, canceled or something. So we want to make sure to have it done in time. So I think that was the last slide. So if there's any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer them.
Just to comment, great job, Justin. I appreciate all you're doing on this. And I don't mean whenever I nag about it, it's just because, concerned because I sit on the other board too. And when I get the reports, I'm always looking at Herriman. We're at like 175% of our contract or something like that. And I'm always like, oh, we got to get that fixed. We got to get that fixed because we do not want to have to pay tier 2 rates. That would be very expensive for our residents. And so we've got to figure it out. And yeah, I'm sure it's like reinventing the wheel. It's not easy to implement these standards, but really important to do it. So thank you for all your efforts.
Yeah, I see those same numbers and it makes me cringe every time as well. I have been in discussion with Jordan Valley for about 2 years on this. And some of the discussions is we have these water efficiency standards coming up. And so they I don't want to say they were telling us to hold off, but they just wanted to, so it has been something that's been on my radar for a couple of years, but growth has happened so quickly that it went from, we were staying right around that 120% and then it just exploded over the last 2 years. So
yeah, and I think that just some of the feedback I've received is just, I think even working with our team, they've gained some things too, like, oh, we can't really make this work because of this or because of this. So I think it's been a mutually beneficial dialogue to have to hammer through this. So thanks for all your efforts.
Yeah.
Just I have one question about this that I'm not quite understanding. Is our contract based on a gross amount of water or is it based on a per capita water use or something like that? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Is it just our contract is outdated because we've grown so fast, or are we just using that much more water than the average per capita?
No, so our per capita water use is actually fairly low when you compare it to the rest of Salt Lake County. Our contract with Jordan Valley is based on a set amount and it's based on acre feet. And our current contract is 2,667 acre feet per year. Now that's a take or pay contract. So whether we use all 2,667 or we use 2,000, we still pay for all 2,667. And then in there's a 20% buffer that allows us to kind of go over that contract. Obviously we're well over that now, but it's kind of a fine line. What you don't want to do is contract for more water than you'll use because you're still paying for it. And with the new water rates, like Sherry alluded to, the Block 2 water rates, it's one of those where now there's going to be somewhat of a penalty if we go over the 20%. Originally, there wasn't a penalty. I've had to do this once or twice in the past where basically we just have to write a letter to Jordan Valley and say, we're creeping up on our contract amount. It looks like we're going to go over that 120%. Can you serve us water? And in the past, there's basically been no penalty for going over that, but now there will be. So what we're looking at is I've been going through all the numbers, our historic usage from Jordan Valley, our own production from our own wells, to try and determine and figure out exactly what acre foot contract we need to get from Jordan Valley, so that we're not, using less, but we're staying within that 100 and 120%, so that we're not paying for water we're not using, and that we're not going over that and being penalized.
How often is that contract updated?
We updated it probably 3 or 4 years ago, and then one of the other tricky things is we continue to add secondary water. We've added a couple water sources over the years, and not knowing exactly how that's going to impact our total water purchase from Jordan Valley. It's really tricky to try and calculate exactly what that should be. So from here, like I said, we've done it probably every 4 to 5 years in the past. I foresee it happening probably every year or 2 from now on, to make sure that we're staying in between that 100 and 120%.
I appreciate that feedback. Just one other question. Has there been any analysis of whether is it cheaper to buy more water than we need, or pay the higher rate if we go over by a little bit? Is there a break-even point there where it would be okay for us to have an extra 10 or 15% buffer, but that would end up being better than not having that buffer and having to pay the Block 2 rates? Has there been any analysis of that?
I've looked at that as well. It seems like it would probably be more advantageous for us to have a higher contract by a little bit than pay the Block 2 rates, because the Block 2 rates are almost double what our current rate is. And so I think we'll look and see, and we might err on the high side of caution to make sure our contract is a little bit higher. And we may end up paying for water we don't use, but it would probably be better than trying to cut it really close and then be penalized.
That would be my point after what you said. I think that's the right direction for us to go.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions from the council? All right, thank you, Justin.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll move on to item 2.2, discussion regarding the Danzy Historic Home Park. Heidi.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to present. This is a really unique park, and I'm really excited about it. Jonathan, could you go to the next slide? So this is the concept. I just want you to look at it. I don't know, John, if you can zoom in or not in certain areas of the image here, but we can. Okay, great. So as you know, the first home that was built outside of Fort Herriman was constructed by Robert Danzy, and he lived in a log dugout while he built his home in 1869. And that home is the centerpiece of this park. So if you could zoom in on number 1, or just point to it, that's where his home stands now. And as you've heard from Wendy in previous meetings, it's our intention to restore and preserve that home as best we can, in addition to preserve the log cabins and the dugout that Robert Danzy lived in while he built that. So on this concept, the home is there, and that's it at its original location. And then to the east of it, where you see the number 2, those 3 rectangles, those are representative. That's right. Those are representative of the log cabins. And so those are really the centerpieces of this park. We have been working with a design group in-house and with Focus Engineering and Focus Engineering created this concept for us to look at tonight. Last week, just as an update, I presented this to the Historic Committee as well as to Dixie Danzy, and they had some great ideas for us. But overall, they thought this was a great idea. So I'll just start here in the center at that house. And I mentioned the house, and then to the east of it are the cabins. To the west of it, the number 3, we would like to have some demonstration or some education gardens where we could have plant material or a kitchen garden that would sort of teach people about what the pioneers did for food and how they managed their gardens at that time, that era. Next to it, number 6 is actually the monument that is currently across the street. It's a stone monument. It has had some vandalizing done to it, and so there was a plaque on it that's no longer there. We're working with the historic committee to create that plaque again, and then we'd like to move it to this location so that it could be a part of this historic, like an introduction. As you can see, the parking lot right there is number 9. It would be like an introduction as you come in this park. As you move more east of this park and you move past those cabins, you can go along the sidewalk there, you get to number 4. And number 4, we would envision to be an amphitheater that would be made out of stones and grass. John, if you could scroll up, there's a sketch that is on this page. We'll go the other way. Yep, right there. So you can see the sketch right there. So we would envision these stones to be placed in ground so that they're really impactful, something that, you know, really could even mimic something the pioneers had, but it would give us a small space and a learning space. So like schools could come or families could come and they could start their education there and then branch out. If you want to zoom in again, John, we're going to work east some more. And so off the side of the amphitheater, you see all these little fingerly trails. And what we envision here is that it's a themed trail system. And when I talked with the historic committee, they really liked this idea. And what we're thinking, what we have envisioned for this is that you walk through these trails, it tells the story of the pioneers, but it also tells the story of Herriman and how Herriman was founded. And I mean, Herriman has such a amazing history, and we would like to tell that story here through this themed garden trail. We also have, I'm not sure if I'm going to say this right, but we have like a wagon that Wendy let me know about, and we were trying to figure out if we could have this wagon on display somewhere here with the ability to keep it safe, but still have the ability to let people see it. And so we're working through that, but that might be a great location for this. And then as you continue more east, the trail goes through this park, and we thought, John, if you could just move down a little to the 3 circles at the bottom. So number 12, those red circles, we'd envisioned you could have a couple of programmed gathering spaces, but they're not really programmed. You know, you could have a picnic table with the shelter, or you could have informal seatings where people could sit and gather. You could have a hammock grove where you could have some more recreational play. And so in my mind, I was thinking like picnic shelter right there would be really great, or some informal seating. And then John, if you could come back down and go all the way to the, so as you go all the way to the east, the trail just continues through that grassy area, and then it ends at the street that goes into Hidden Oaks. And then if you go all the way to the west, John, maybe scroll over there. So then over here where this number 12 is where I was thinking would be more appropriate place for like the hammocks, and you could have a little bit more of a separation from your thoughtful, quiet spaces where your gardens and your trails might be, and then put the hammocks down here. To note, around the parking lot, we do have 40 stalls here. Bryce Terry, our traffic engineer, did a traffic study and a comparison, and that was the number that he came up with as the appropriate number for this use and for this site. We would envision number 10 to, let's see, we would envision it to be like a pavilion, a bigger pavilion. And then number 7, that's on the other side of the parking, we thought that'd be a good location. That's right. We thought it'd be a good location for the restrooms. So that's kind of centrally located to the historic amenities and then also the other more active uses. If you can see on this plan, it's adjacent to Herriman Highway, which is going to be an extension of Herriman Main Street. And instead of having a curb and a gutter and a sidewalk, we're proposing that we would have an asphalt path go along there. And then that asphalt path will connect. It's kind of hard to see, but it goes through this little white rectangle on the bottom. That's going to be the entrance monument for Hidden Oaks right there. Yep. But the asphalt trail will continue down into there and it's not shown on this map, but if the larger pit, if you could see the larger picture, this asphalt trail will actually loop around and go down into the community through the neighborhood. And it's about 3/4 of a mile loop. And I think it's going to be pretty cool. So I just wanted to bring this for you and let you know about it. One thing I failed to mention, but Dixie Danzy wants me to try to figure out how to do this, is she has recorded a lot of, she called them the old timers. But people who were in the beginning of Herriman, as old as you could get at the time, she got their histories and recorded them. And we just think how cool it would be if we could figure out a way, as you walked through that history trail, of a way you could push a button and hear their voices, tell their story. And so we're working on things like that. I think Dixie has some great ideas, and so does the historic committee. And so we're working with them. Do you guys have any questions?
Not questions, but I'll throw this in there. I know Youth Council wants to do a lot of that history stuff too. So
Okay.
Don't be shy about reaching out to them. They want to interview the old timers. They want to interview those and things like those people and stuff and gather that information. So maybe they can be a part of this going forward.
That's a great idea. We'll make note of that.
And I've gotten several calls from some of the other Dancy families that live close by me the same. It's like great grandpa and stuff like that. They have lots of stories that they want to contribute to it too.
Cool.
I think it looks fantastic, and I'm looking forward to see what becomes of this.
Yeah, I don't have any questions. Just, a comment that I think obviously Wendy had great foresight in in us being able to preserve the Danzy home, and we talk frequently about obviously the history of Herriman and wanting to preserve pieces of that, because there's the few of the real old pieces are hard to come by and not in really great condition. But to find a focal point like this around the Danzy home, I think it's a great location here to build this. Again, I really like the concept. I'm excited to see it continue to move forward and how we can integrate those other pieces of history into there that will certainly kind of come out of the woodwork from some of those, quote unquote old timers as we move forward. I think it'll be a great project.
I would add one comment. First of all, I love the idea. I think this is going to be a great amenity for the city of Herriman for many, many, many years. This is just awesome to preserve this history and have this there. I envision it as being a destination for school children coming to learn about the history of Herriman, a lot of elementary school classes and things going. So where we have that pavilion number 10 being proposed, I would like to make that considered to be large enough to have, a couple of classes to sit down and have their lunch or something like that. Just big enough to accommodate that. Like, I don't know if you've been up to this is the Place Heritage Park, has some areas where you can actually sit down in groups and eat and things like that. So just something like that to keep in mind.
Great idea.
Steve, is that normal conditions pavilion or COVID condition pavilion?
Why you got to stir the pot, man? No, I think just big enough. I don't know how many that is. I don't know if that's a class of 30 or a couple of classes of 60, but just enough space for some people to still be able to do that. I think that's a big part of what the kids like to do on their field trips.
Awesome. Any other feedback or comments from the council?
Yep, two quick. This is Jared. Love the history, but it's not just Danzy history, right? Herriman history. When you talk to the other kind of founding families and include all that. And then the second thing, and maybe I missed it, does this trail connect into the rest of our trail systems?
Right. Yes. So the trail system that goes along Herriman Main Street or Herriman Highway will connect down it's hard. I should have had a slide, but if you can envision the Hidden Oaks, in the middle of Hidden Oaks is a trail system that runs down the middle near the drainage. And so this trail system will connect to that greater trail system. And we're working with every chance I get to throw it out there to connect that trail system further east to, I really want to connect it ultimately over to Midas Creek. So yes, we definitely want to connect this in, and this will connect to Hidden Oaks trail system. Absolutely.
Okay. All right, if we don't have any further questions, once again, well, thank you, Heidi, for your enthusiasm and efforts. Appreciate it. I think you gave one of our staff over here a little bit of a heart attack when you hopped on so excited. So,
Sorry.
no, it was great. I think Brett was just excited to see your face.
Oh, okay, yay.
I don't think she's really excited. I think she just seems really excited compared to Justin.
Oh.
I am really excited. This is a very unique park, and you don't usually, we did a tour of historic parks in the valley, and not all cities have one. And I think it really is important. And so it is unique, and I am excited. So it's okay.
Thank you very much, Heidi. We appreciate it. We will go ahead and move on to another park issue, which is discussion of parks, recreation, and open space impact fee enactment. And we'll move to our city attorney, Chase.
Hi, council. Good evening. I'm not going to be excited as we just saw, but that's because we're talking about impact fees, which are never as fun and are just as boring. But they are important because that's how we pay for this beautiful park. So, just a little bit of procedure I wanted to bring up, and I included the impact fee enactment in the packet just for your so you could look at that and provide any feedback before we notified that and gave that to the public for the review before the hearing next week. So under state statute, in order to enact impact fees, you have to pass what's called, or impose impact fees, you have to pass what's called the impact fee enactment. State code requires that we have a public hearing on that and that we provide public 10 days to review that enactment before it's passed by the council. It's really nothing more than an ordinance that adopts the impact fees. And it is the ordinance that sets that rate, right? The impact fee analysis and the impact fee facilities plan describe what the highest rate can be and the method for achieving that highest rate, and what Zions Bank went into, what they looked at in coming up with that highest rate. But the enactment, which is, again, the ordinance that council uses to impose that impact fee, establishes that rate. Under state statute, you can't go any higher than what's included in the impact fee analysis, but you can go lower. It's really not practice for cities to do that. They generally adopt the analysis that the, in this case, Zions Bank came up with. But this would be the means, again, by which that impact fee is enacted and imposed within the city. One more important piece is that, so again, backing up, we do need to have a public hearing on this. I know we've had a public hearing on the impact fee facilities plan and the impact fee analysis. There would be a separate hearing for the impact fee enactment on that ordinance. That is scheduled, I believe, for the 9th, September 9th, our first meeting in September. At that point, after you've heard public feedback, you can either approve the impact fee enactment at the end of that meeting or make changes, recommend changes that I would implement into that enactment that could then be approved at a later meeting. And then finally, that's not effective for 90 days. Most ordinances we make effective the day of when they're approved. This, under state statute, is not effective for 90 days. So it would go into effect 3 months after it's passed. So any questions about that or any recommendations that you have on that? It is a pretty standard enactment. Susie Becker with Zions Bank helped us prepare that. It is, again, pretty standard. There are a lot of requirements under the state statute. All of those are included. I've reviewed it and I think it's adequate for what we're implementing here. But again, we can always make some changes. So I'm willing to receive any feedback or questions that you might have.
Jared, do you have any questions?
Nope.
Clint? Currently, looks like we have Steve and Sheriff stepped off for just a second, so I don't think we have any questions about that at this time.
I'm here. I don't have any questions either.
Fantastic. No, I think good. Just for the public record, though, this is when we're talking about impact fees. Impact fees are assessed on new construction only, not on, existing homeowners. Correct?
Yes, that is correct. Yep.
So this is not something that's affecting our current residents. This is something that our new residents will help pay to help fund new parks based on the impact that they have on our park system. So, any other questions? If there's not, anything else from you, Chase?
Nope. Thank you, council.
Okay, thank you, Chase. We will look forward to seeing that next meeting. That will bring us to item 2.4, city manager updates. Our city manager, Brett Wood.
Okay, we're good to go now. I turned it off so it wouldn't hear me shuffling papers. To let you know, the only thing in comment I want to make is think about our firefighters that went to California, and our own Chief Whittison is there. If Dom just take a moment and tell us what his role is there in California. And I know that Draper's got firefighters there as well. We are just thinking about them in this time. We want to make sure they're safe, and just not, we got resources out there that are close to home.
Thanks, Brett. So Anthony, or Chief Whittison, is there as a task force leader. So from our department, UFA, we sent 2 engines, and other departments around the state sent engines as well. So what a task force leader does is he basically kind of guides the operation of the entire task force. So all 3 to 5 engines that are out there. We've had good reports back from them. They're doing well. Their help is definitely needed. They're short-staffed in California for the amount of fires that they're having, and I really don't anticipate the additional requests for help to cease. I think it's going to continue based on what they're seeing. So, but they're happy, healthy, and doing a good job out there.
Appreciate that, Chief, and I believe I speak on behalf of our council when we say that the city gives our full support and the individuals that represent our community and that protect our community, and are grateful that they're willing to go and help other communities located in other states to make sure that they're protected as well, because we know how well they take care of ours. So thank you.
Any other comment by council on that, or I'm ready to go into another item? Okay. There's a lot of people from the city of Utah and our agencies are there, and we're just thinking about this time because, especially we have Dom Burchett sitting behind me here in this room. His brother was lost 2 years ago on August 18th, I believe it was. And so we do think about them. They're in a very dangerous area. The tall timbers and stuff is very different fire than they fight here locally for us in our wildland urban interface. Anyway, try not to be too emotional about thinking about that and thinking about them, but our visit with General Smith from Camp Williams this week, he was very encouraged about our team here at Herriman continuing to push along, even though the federal government has changed some rules and how the paperwork has to happen for ACUB money and REFI money and the state money coming back. But we were able to close on the Mascaro property above the cove, and we told the council about that. So we now own that property as well, and they're a big chunk of the bluffs. So kudos to Gordon and Heather, and those have been working through that. I guess we got some curveballs thrown to us this last time and had to reconfigure the paperwork, but we're successful. But we also are on the radar right now to maybe receiving our $2 million this year.
Fantastic.
So a very significant amount of money coming to Herriman this year, specifically from the Pentagon and the REFI money. So it's no small task, but it's kind of cool when you go up there and know how much property we own up there already. So I want to let you know publicly that that's a big deal. And we're getting closer and closer to finish up the bluffs, and we'll be looking at our properties already with this next, as we'd call it, tranche of money coming in next little while, and we may be going up Yellow Fork and some other areas as well. So outside of our boundaries, but yet still a need for this area for recreation and buffering the Camp Williams.
Thank you.
And that's all I have. We covered a lot of our items, unless the council has any other questions of me before we take a break before our general meeting starts.
Are there any other questions from council before we take a brief break for our meeting that will start at 7?
I just got a question back to the ACUB funding and stuff. Obviously, great news that we're getting, on par to get another couple $1 million this year. you mentioned some of the changes, they've made some changes in that program. How do we think that potentially affects our ability to continue to qualify for that money and receive that money, moving forward with some of the changes that you're seeing and what were some of those curveballs that got kind of thrown our way?
The only one I know that might know something that might be on, I don't know if Heather's on, but it would be, if she's not on, it'd be Wendy might know something about that. But I know the paperwork and the process changed just enough. We had to rewrite it and resubmit it. And Wendy is on. But what I was told very quickly is because we're so nimble and agile and move quickly, that's why we're successful. And this next tranche of money is because other people aren't as good a team as you have. And so it's leftover money. So they say, can Herriman spend it? And we say, you bet. So go ahead, Wendy.
Really, it's just that they like to change forms on us a lot. And then they like to have us refill out different forms. And then they want me to fix my signature on the forms. And then they want a different font on the forms. But we're grateful for it and we do it. And Heather does an excellent job in managing that and getting all of that paperwork filled out and pushing it back and forth. And Paul Raymond and Elisa Dixon with the camp, they're fantastic to work with. And we hold each other's hands through this process. So we work through it. Heather only whines every once in a while, but we give her.
We appreciate it, and we find that we still have an amazing view that we can cherish because of all the efforts that have been put forward, and it's part of being a fantastic partner that Camp Williams is to us. So I would commend staff again, because I believe this is not the first time that we've been able to get money because we've been able to adapt quickly. And so I once again commend staff for their efforts to help preserve our mountain and to preserve our city and use those resources wisely. So thank you very much. Any other comments go ahead.
Yeah, just a follow-up question, sorry. Again, just looking at this program, is there anticipated, with a lot of changes in funding at the federal level, do we still anticipate them allocating money to this program moving forward for us to be able to, to obviously tap into? It's been, what does that put us up to now with another $2 million? Are we $15, $17 million that we've gotten in NACUP funding now, Wendy?
Heather, are you on?
Yes, ma'am. I'm the whiner over here.
What are we up to? 15?
So we're almost 16 right now. So with the next 2 million, yeah, close to 18.
That's fantastic.
And we don't anticipate losing funds. We haven't heard that. So.
No, I don't think it's a matter of losing funds. We are, our cooperative agreement expires this year. So we are amending that. So that's more paperwork. So they don't anticipate any problems approving that. So we're grateful for that. And then we're also getting funds with our West Traverse Community Partnership Program through the state. We received $650,000 from them this last go round. And they're also looking at another grant from, Wendy, was it NCRS?
Yeah, NCRS.
It's about $10 million that would go to additional properties as well as some administration support. So yeah, we're excited.
That's awesome. Must have had something to do with that awesome representation that city sent back to Washington on the last round of visits.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, sure it is.
So what Heather alluded to is that other grant money. That's another thing that General just updated us on Monday, and he told us that getting into that, like Heather said, it goes beyond just buying property. It talks about programming and reclaimed areas and stuff and vegetation and habitat. It really broadens how that money can be used, and we're very, very excited about that because you think about that, what it could do, it'll talk about the mule deer life, the cougar life, all that habitat's going on up there with a trail system and vegetation. It's quite a thing that we could really expand on to make that mountain very beautiful and attractive. So very exciting stuff coming down the pipeline or the military line.
Looking forward to seeing what staff can do. We believe in them. So any other comments before we take
Well, if I can add just on a personal note here, it is extremely rewarding and flattering to be, even if it's by proxy, affiliated with anything that's being described as nimble and flexible. I really appreciate that.
I have never been described as nimble and flexible, by the way.
That's why it's just so exciting to hear those words used. It is great.
Thank you, guys. All right, if we have no further items for this work meeting, I'll accept a motion to adjourn and take a brief recess where we will return to our general meeting at 7 p.m.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion from Clint and a second from Sherry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, this work meeting is adjourned. We will reconvene at 7 p.m. Thank you. I think I'm still on mute. All right, can you guys hear me? Awesome. Jared, are you with us as well? Okay, sounds like Councilman Henderson may have stepped away for just a minute, so we'll see him when he gets back. We will go ahead and get started with our general meeting. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance, which I will lead. So if you would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will move on to item 4.2, City Council comments and recognitions.
Mayor, I'll just make one brief. Sorry, Steve. I just want to make one brief comment. You know, obviously, nobody forgets that obviously we're in the midst of some unprecedented times. But I just want to commend our city administration and our city staff for the way that they have handled this. The fact that even under the conditions, the alternating schedules that have been put in place to help limit exposure to each other, keep a healthy workforce. All of those things are definitely different and out of the norm. But that being said, I personally have not received one citizen issue or concern about the fact that, their needs are not being met from the city. And again, I think that's an incredible thing, given the times that we're dealing with and the challenges that we face. So I just simply wanted to say thank you to all of our staff and employees for the incredible job that they do under some challenging circumstances.
Steve?
So yeah, I wanted to make a confession that earlier this week, actually yesterday, I recognized that I had made a huge mistake in relation to a procedure that every resident has to go through in getting their water hooked up or their accounts activated with the city of Herriman for their water. In moving, because I had a delay from my old home to my new home, I had neglected to complete the application with the city in order to take care of that. And yesterday, I had the experience of getting my water shut off in the afternoon for not having that done. So I laugh about it, and I'm glad everybody else is laughing about it right now too. But as part of that process, a couple things were revealed that I think might be some holes in our current process, the way that we communicate with our residents, our customers, some of the way that we handle things. I had a conversation with Brett yesterday, just for acknowledgement here, referencing some holes that we have. For example, we haven't been able to take payments from residents at their homes or at their sites if they wanted to make an immediate payment to try and stop a shut off or something if they were behind on their bills. So I thought that was something that we should be looking into. Another thing came up is our noticing and how we're talking to people about potential actions resulting in a shut off of water supply at people's homes. Another thing that I just want to talk about that kind of surprised me was that we recently were presented with and agreed to support a change to our enforcement regarding the turning off of water in any residences right now during the COVID pandemic. We wouldn't want anybody to not have access to hygienic services or to worry about water being turned off if there was an unemployment or something else going on that was causing an issue right now. And so it was a little bit surprising to me to have that water turned off, especially without notice. So I've asked that we look into our process a little bit and see how we can enhance the service levels that we're delivering to customers. Again, I confess this was my fault. I failed to take action. It is nobody else's responsibility that this happened other than my own. But it did let me experience what some of our residents could be experiencing, and showed that we have some perhaps inefficiencies in some of our SOPs inside of our departments. I think it's something that we should be updating on a regular basis, at least biannually, if not annually, where we take a look at how we're doing things, see if there's ways to enhance things, to use new technologies to improve our service levels. We want to make sure that our residents have every opportunity to get the best service they possibly can. And working with the city of Herriman should be state of the art, should be easy, should be convenient. And I would just encourage our departments, our administration to continue to look for opportunities to find ways to enhance the service levels that we're delivering.
Thank you, Steve. And with that, I would like to congratulate the council the city for holding the council to the same standards as we hold our residents. It's always good to see that we are treated exactly the same way as our residents are, and I think that's a sign of a healthy city. So thank you very much. Sherry or anyone else? Okay. We will.
They told me there would be perks.
Perks? What perks? You get
the perk. The perk is you get scrutinized more than the average person.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
The residents are going to make sure you do it right. That's really what the perk is. You're going to know if you did it wrong.
Exactly. No opportunities for messing up here.
Yeah. All right. We will move on to the public comment portion of our meeting. The audience members may bring any item to the city council's attention. Comments will be limited to 2 minutes. State law prohibits the council from acting on items that do not appear on the agenda. Public comment for this meeting will also be conducted electronically. Any person interested in addressing the city council may submit a comment by emailing recorder@herriman.org or by visiting herriman.org/agenda-and-minutes, where there'll be a link to join the electronic meeting to submit a comment. Your statement will be read into the public record. At this time, I will open the public comment portion of our meeting. It does not look like we have any members of the public in attendance. We do have some staff in attendance, and we appreciate their compliance with our social distancing guidelines. So I will turn to the city recorder to see if we have any, and we do have one. So I'm going to turn the time over to her to read that into the record.
Comment from Natalie Platt. Her concern is with the crosswalk just west of the LDS Church and south of Fort Herriman Middle School on Butterfield Parkway. Neighbors, fellow parents, and Natalie are concerned about the speed on the street, as well as the fact that in the early winter hours, it can be difficult to see the kids crossing the street going to or from the middle school. She has witnessed kids crossing with vehicles still going through, along with some near misses. Many parents are dropping kids off in the church parking lot and stopping in the middle of the crosswalk to turn into the church, as well as the parking along Butterfield Parkway for after-school pickup directly in front of and behind the crosswalk, making it difficult to see and be seen. Currently, there are 2 horse crossing signs indicating the crosswalk. Even if some flashing lights were placed on the signs to help with the visibility, she thinks that it would help with some of the safety issues. That and a speed trailer of some kind. She's previously reached out to Scott F. with the police department, but wanted to present her concern to the council.
Thank you for that comment. We appreciate that. We do take the safety of our children very seriously, and I'm comfortable in giving staff direction to reach out to that individual and make sure that we are addressing those particular concerns as best as possible. Any other comments? Thank you. All right, we will move on to item 6, which is our city council board and committee reports. All right.
I'll go and get mine out of the way, I guess. I don't know if anyone else has any. Had actually a busy week since our last council meeting, and I'll try and move through them very quickly. So the first meeting was COG. that I attended, so Council of Governments last week, and a lot of good presentations during that meeting. One was actually simultaneous with the meeting I had almost directly after that, which was Transcom. So I'll cover that one in a minute. One of the first ones that they covered within COG was actually an update on the 2020 census. And so I just wanted to take the opportunity again from this point to give you at least a few statistics that they threw out there, mainly the participation that we had as of last week. And Jackie may certainly have checked that to see if it's gone up in that. But obviously COVID has affected the ability to get out and collect the census data like they had planned going into this year for the 2020 census. But it's important, obviously, that we get every member of our community to participate in this census. Just a couple of quick things that I will throw out to you. I'm trying to make sure I don't misquote, but basically in the presentation, it said for every person not counted in Utah, we lose $1,860 each year, which is obviously $18,600 per person over the next 10 years. So there is certainly a financial impact to the city, and as we know, or to the state and to the city, as we know, if we don't have those accurate data numbers for us when it comes to our tax distribution. And if I remember correctly, there's been some changes, obviously, in the timeline for collecting the census data throughout the year due to COVID. Apologize for that. And I believe now it was going to be extended to late October, but I believe now the revised schedule basically has the self-response phase ending on September 30th of obviously this year. So just a little over a month away. So again, we need to do our part to get the word out there to help our residents participate so that they can be counted in the census. As far as last week when the data was presented, and then Jackie, you can tell me if you know if it's changed or not, but they had Herriman as of last week at 68.7% participation rate. So we have really a lot of work that we can do. Right now they had some of the highest participations. South Jordan was at 78.5%. Sandy, 78.3%. Really a lot on the east side over that, but our neighbors in Riverton, 77.2%, with an average across Salt Lake County of 71% participation, and across Utah at 68.1%. So we're really just basically on par with the state, but wanted to, again, use this opportunity to ask everybody to participate in that census. Jackie, are you aware if our numbers have really changed much since this presentation was given to us last week?
As of right now, we are at 70.2%.
Well, we have to come up a little bit. So that's good news, but we obviously still have work to do. Obviously, I know we've done our part as a city, but want to encourage those to continue to participate. The next that was part of COG and again, part of Transcom that I participated in really right after that was discussion of the upcoming funding programs or grant programs for local governments. And I won't go through all the details. I will send out a PowerPoint that was just distributed to the members of COG just the other day. I'll send that out to the rest of the council. But obviously there's several different funding programs out there for the city to participate in to help with a lot of our infrastructure. There's the TAP funding, so Transportation Alternatives Program, the CMAQ program, which is the Congestion Mitigation Air Quality, and I can't even remember all of them. The STP grant, which is the Surface Transportation Program. All of these funding cycles are all go together. Really what I want them to do, and I know our staff does a great job of staying up on these processes, is just put out there that the funding programs have been announced now. That took place last week. The notice for letters of intent should be sent to all of the cities if they have not already received them by the end of this month, with the letters of intent that are due for those that want to participate in these funding programs in September, so just a month away. And then, of course, the applications are due in December, with recommendations for projects will be in the spring of next year. I know we've been able as a city to participate in a lot of these funding programs, encourage us to continue to participate and put in for those and be able to get those grant funding dollars out there for us to help us do some of our programs. But they have changed the format over the past couple of years, again, to where they are, you have to set this letter of intent. I believe that last year was the first year they did that, but a lot of these funding programs coming up. The last meeting I participated in last week was on the UTA board, the advisory board. I think I mentioned earlier, was put in as the second vice on that board earlier this year. We are actually holding, one of the big things that the advisory board does is make recommendations when it comes to TOD developments, or those transit-oriented developments that really surround the front runner and the tracks, train alignments throughout our county and as it extends into the other counties. And it is, last year in the legislative session, the legislature made a change to where there is not a cap put on how many of those transit-oriented developments that there can be. So we're really working hard at the advisory board level to really understand that, to be able to educate those about the TOD process and use those to help drive ridership and development along those corridors. Again, we know that the transportation infrastructure is, especially in our area, but other areas throughout the state, the congestion is starting to certainly creep up beyond desirable levels. We need to find alternative ways to encourage our people to use our available transit systems, and working with and developing these transit-oriented districts is going to be key to that. And of course, in our valley, really the main one we're focused on right now is it's starting to continue in the planning process will be the prison property, the redevelopment of the point of the mountain there, and how that can be developed out to, again, enhance all of the surrounding areas, because we know as that hub develops out with all of the jobs that will be created with that job center, that will mean more people obviously living in the surrounding communities, and we need to be able to have transportation options for them to be able to commute to work without adding more congestion to our streets. So we're working on just a specific TOD workshop for all members of the advisory board, and of course open to the public to be able to understand those processes and how we can enhance those proposed projects as they come forward to us for review, to maximize, again, what we have available to us currently and in the future with our transit system. So that's my report for my 3 meetings. Sorry to be a little long on those.
Thank you.
I just report this to the council. I let Brett know about this a couple of days ago, and when we met with the with Whitford for the garbage collection, we have spent, I believe it was a little over it's pretty close to $45,000 in salaries and things like that, COVID related type of things. We've had a few confirmed cases, and so we've had some salary go out to the tune of about $45,000. And the garbage district does not have a way to access the funds without going to the municipalities. They can't go directly to the county. So we're just working on a calculation so that we would probably do it based on household, per household kind of calculation. So it's equal throughout the cities. And then we would come to each municipality requesting COVID funding to reimburse the district for those expenses. So I just want to give you guys a heads up that will be coming from the garbage district, asking for some COVID funding relief.
Is that basically the same thing as we did with the fire district?
Yep, it is.
Okay, thank you for those reports. Appreciate it. We will move on to item 7.1, Economic Development Strategic Plan Presentation by Bonneville Research.
My mic on now?
Your mic is on.
All right, good. Well, thank you very much. appreciate the opportunity to work with Herriman again. This is the update of your economic development strategic plan.
Sorry, we can't see you. Do you mind stating your name real quick for the record?
Robert Springmeyer, Chairman, Bonneville Research.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
We also have Tom Burdette on the call as well.
Thank you.
So let's roll to the second slide. Herriman's growing fast. Since the last census, you've more than doubled, and you likely could add another 7,200 households in the next 5 years. I was impressed with the fact that you're a city of young families, and almost an equal number of people are school-aged in Herriman are in the prime earning age of 25 to 44. Next. Okay, there we go. Herriman is the center of the rapidly growing Southwest Salt Lake County region. I heard the comment earlier in the work session describing Herriman as being out here. You're no longer out here. You are here now. Household growth in this region is 76% faster than the state. You're the transportation hub of Bamberger and Mountain View corridor. Herriman is unique in that you still have 22% of developable land within your annexation declaration area. You could actually reach a build-out population of 115,000. Next. Herriman residents are well educated. 50% of the residents 25 and over have a college degree. Now, a lot of those are two-year degrees, but we deal with that specifically in the plan. Herriman residents are well paid. Your household income is about 50% higher than the Salt Lake County median. 79.2% are homeowners. You've got a high medium home value of almost, well, a little over $382,000. Next. Herriman residents are professionals, sales. Almost half are in that upper area, a little over half are in that, almost 60%. Administrative services, administrative support, low numbers of construction. Next. 94%, or 93.4% actually work in Salt Lake County. Almost 72% work for a private employer. Only 4.1% are self-employed, and almost 60% of those that are self-employed are females. You like to drive. You drive a long way to work. 77% drive alone to work. Average 27.4 minutes driving to work, but almost 24% drive 40 plus minutes to work. Pre-COVID-19, only 10% work from home. And I think we'd all agree that number has probably gone up dramatically. Next. This is information that came from your business licenses. Only 17.5% of the Herriman businesses have any employees at all. Half of the Herriman employees work for just 7 businesses. And almost 83% of the Herriman businesses are home occupations. Next slide is really interesting. So if you can see this, you've got the businesses that have employees with the red dots, and they're all clustered right around your high traffic areas. But the home businesses, the little yellow dots, are almost evenly scattered throughout the city, which I thought was extraordinary. Let's look at the next slide. These are your commercial areas. And again, heavily focused on their high traffic areas, the major highways, not unusual, but spaced out. You don't have a strong city core, even though you'd like to do so, but that just has been slow in occurring. Let's look next. When we look at retail, we generally look at it in terms of drive times. I think most of you probably remember some earlier work that was done looking at radiuses. Well, we found, frankly, that the distance people drive, the time it takes to drive that distance is really the determining factor. And generally, you can divide it into three different categories. You've got the 5-minute drive, which is often the convenience shopping, 10-minute, which is often the neighborhood shopping, and then the 20-minute, and I call that the stock up shopping. That's the kind of shopping that one does when they go to a Costco or they go to a Walmart. But you can see the various drive times out of Herriman, and the center point is frankly City Hall. So and the point of this is you've got an awful lot of competition for retail in Herriman. Let's look at the next slide. In Herriman city budget, 2/3 of your tax revenues come from one point, and that's the sales tax monies. Property taxes, a little under 9%. So what does that mean for Herriman's financial sustainability? Next. So this is what your sales look like between 2019 and 2020. So this did not necessarily reflect the COVID-19 impact. But look at where the non-store retailers are, up 177%. Food, up 71%. Food service, essentially flat. Retail general, up 30%. Gasoline, 22%. Information, 25%. Manufacturing, up 55%. Arts and recreation as a category, down almost half. The non-store retailers are your internet sales.
Retailer would be?
I'm sorry?
So I mean, can you give us the description of what a non-store retailer
I was just trying to do that. Thank you, Councilman. A non-store retailer would be primarily internet sales, could also be catalog sales, mail order sales, but and the state has just now consolidated all of those sales that don't have a brick and mortar, if you want to use that term, into one category now that they all call it non-store retail. And that's even if you cluster those all together, that's still where you're seeing your big growth. Well, let's go on now. We can see what that does to your income. This is a slide that looks at commercial office demand. And I think the critical thing here on this slide is to look at absorbed space. So absorbed means that this is the space that has been rented or leased or purchased, acquired, and occupied. So in the Southwest Valley part of this, which is, as you can see, is essentially Herriman. Absorption was 0, vacancies 13.4%, and you have under construction 154,000 of commercial office space. West Valley, in the Lake Park, which is a very large development, they actually had a negative absorption. That meant that people vacated space. Their vacancy is 7.6%, and even with the loss of absorption, they still have 331,000 square feet under construction. Draper absorbed 11.3 thousand square feet, vacancies 16%, pretty high, but they've got almost 500,000 under construction. Lehigh, we all hear a lot of talk about Silicon Slopes. They absorbed 26,000 square feet, have a 14.4 vacancy, and they still have another 333,000 square feet if you look, if the detail you could see, so Lehigh was the light green that's just to the left of that Lehigh box. The darker green is what they call the central growth, and it had a negative of 333,000 square feet of absorption. So this all came from Commerce CBR research, a real estate firm. And they're calling it a
this
pause.
was all prior to COVID data?
I'm sorry?
And all of this data was prior to COVID, right?
All this data is current as of last month. So this reflects
COVID. Does include, okay.
So this does reflect COVID. What it's basically saying is we're going to see a pause in new commercial office development. Let's go on. Herriman is the center of the rapidly growing Southwest region. You look at how you sit right there. You've got South Jordan, which is the big gorilla. Riverton, which has got a little bit more retail activity than you have. Bluffdale, which is the small growing, but that's where you all sit. Let's look next. Okay, this is what you look like as the 4 Southwest County cities. These were the July sales, or the July reports, which really then mean that these were the May reports. So sales that took place in May then get reported to the State Tax Commission, and then they get posted in July. So statewide, we saw a 2.3% increase. Salt Lake City unusually had an almost 12% decline. Now I've got the August reports as well, and so Salt Lake came back up 20% for August. So I would assume that what happened is there was probably a significant taxpayer that didn't report or had a glitch in the reporting. But the Southwest cities as a group, you're almost half of Salt Lake. And in the August report, you were actually 51%. The 61% of Salt Lake I think was an aberrationally low for Salt Lake City. But look
That's
again.
Just those 4 cities, just to verify?
Just those 4 cities. This is the 4 cities of the Southwest County. Now you can see South Jordan is the gorilla, but they grew 9.2% over that period. If you look at August, they actually dropped 12%. Herriman, 22.9%. The August, you jumped up to 33% increase. Riverton, 9%, dropped down from 12% to 9%. And Bluffdale jumped all the way back up to 15. So again, the comment I heard earlier about out here, you're essentially you have half as a group, you represent half of the retail activity of what Salt Lake City is doing. You're a major sector. And if there was a general comment is that I don't think when you deal with the rest of the state, I don't think you recognize how important you've become. I hate to harp on it, but I don't think the capital investment from the legislature necessary for the light rail extension, the capital funding necessary for the Salt Lake Community College campus in Herriman reflects what's going on in the southwest part of the valley. Let's go on. Here's your combined population. Right now, you're 195 for, soon you'll be 216. Salt Lake's 213. West Valley's 135. Sandy, Lehigh, 70,000. Draper, 50,000. I find it astounding that we still hear all this talk about what's going on with Silicon Slopes, and all the talk that even I heard this evening talking about the focus in Draper on the new prison site. You've got more happening in Herriman right now and in the Southwest Valley cities than all the areas that's getting all the attention. Okay, let's go on. These are the goals and strategies that were developed and part of the process here. So infrastructure development, again, strongly working with the regional planning and development organizations to get your fair share, quite frankly. Local light rail service, rapid bus transit, and other transportation infrastructure investments. Earlier in the work session, there was a major part of the conversation about getting your transportation and infrastructure investments. You need to have a transportation infrastructure plan, and you need to have state-of-the-art broadband connectivity. Let's go on. Herriman development. This is more specific, and Tom may want to jump in at some point, but typically an economic development strategic plan becomes part of the general plan. And Herriman right now is undergoing an updating of your general plan. So hopefully most of this information could then be reflected in the general plan. So you've got town center, and what came out of the work that we did is a need for flexible zoning in the town center. Mountain View corridor area, community level shopping. Again, that's that next mid-level where you drive time. Convenient shopping at the neighborhood centers. We've got the auto mall, light rail corridor, light rail out by the Bacchus Highway, and manufacturing development near the Bullfrog Spas area. Okay, let's go on. Employment opportunities. Target high employment, high wage businesses. There's no reason that you should be trying to attract what is more typical in the state of Utah, higher than the average county wage. You certainly shouldn't be thinking about incentives for a business that brings wages lower than your current median, which is, as we all see, is at least 50% higher than the county median. Target locations along the Mountain View corridor for office development, but we saw earlier, we're probably going to see a pause in office development, and that's directly COVID related. Encourage retention of existing businesses. Not hard, but you don't have a lot, but you ought to work hard to keep the ones you do, especially the ones that are providing the employment. And this is where I think the Salt Lake Community College becomes such a critical part of infrastructure development that you need to be working on, and that's the entrepreneurial development programs. You've got a lot of people that are in that well-trained, well-educated, entrepreneurial category. Let's go on. Position Herriman as the new center of population and commerce in the southwest part of Salt Lake County. Create a brand task force, recognize you're a hub for recreation, and recognize, and I thought the park you talked about earlier, your agricultural heritage is really important, and your historical heritage. Next up, sports and recreation. Encourage, support, and again, I heard the comment earlier about the park and the connectivity with your trail system. It's a major part of your asset. But one of the things that we heard constantly in the work we were doing with the steering committee was facilitate multi-use facilities. And this is a bit of an editorial that I slipped in. Encourage development of athlete community support program. You've got pro athletes living in your town. You've got pro athletes that have challenges with dealing with health care as well as family care. In Park City, and I saw it firsthand at Lake Placid and upstate New York. Those athlete programs are heavily dependent on community support programs. Then we need to also, as you're already doing so strongly, is encouraging and nurturing community volunteerism. Next. Post-COVID-19, encourage immediate development of the Salt Lake Community College campus, expand state-of-the-art broadband connectivity, encourage and support networking and business support services. We heard a lot about the need of people that are working from home now, still needing to network. You've got a regional library located right there in Herriman. You've got a regional recreation center located in Herriman. Natural facilities for encouraging networking and business support services. And then one of the issues that came up strongly was dealing with child care and adult care services for people that are working at home. Next up. So this was the steering committee. All that work that you saw, we just went over, came from them. Jared Henderson, as you all know, on the council, Clint Smith, Chris Berber, planning commissioner. Great job with Tammy Moody and Alan Ray. Couldn't have done it without Heather. Mike Malloy with planning, Hunter Watson, who's a resident, Martin Ricks, a resident, Brian Cowley, a resident, Kevin Allred, a resident, and then three people that I was particularly pleased: Laura Hanson, who's the director of planning at UTA, Ted Knowlton, the deputy director for planning of the Wasatch Front Regional Council, and then Scott Hess, who's the Wasatch Front Regional Council economic development planner. And they were all strong participants, and this work really couldn't have been done without them and their support. And I think the last slide is thanks from myself, Bob Springmeyer, and Tom Burdett. And we're happy to answer any questions.
All right, council members, any questions?
This is Jared. I've got some comments and questions. First, Bob, thank you so much for taking on this endeavor and spending the time with the steering committee and my extra phone calls as I missed some of those meetings. One of the main things that we discussed, and we mentioned it in our last full council meeting, I believe, was our conversation centered around coordinating each of those items, right? So looking at the recreation opportunities, recruiting, employment, manufacturing, retail, they all feed off of each other in an economic environment. It's a kind of a living organism. We need a comprehensive plan on how to enable them to help each other So part of our discussion as a council a couple weeks ago was to look for a consultant to help us put together a comprehensive plan to do that, help us really go to, I think a lot of these things, it's not just retail, it's going to our partners at the county and opening up recreation on the West Bench. It's going to the legislature. I'm pointing out a lot of these facts that you've summarized here, the needs that are in place, and really kind of connecting the dots between different entities that should have a common interest that they just don't realize it yet. So you can kind of maybe speak to that kind of global view.
Thanks, Councilman. Yes. And this presentation here was really more of the global view. There are a lot of more specifics in terms of procedures and steps that were outlined in the detailed report. I encourage everybody to take a good look at that. You've got a great team, and I think one of the big problems that Herriman faces is nobody knows what Herriman is and what Herriman has grown to become. And I think I heard, I hate to keep hammering on it, but I even heard it among yourselves about being out here, and that somehow petitioning the Wasatch Front Regional Council, petitioning the legislators to make sure you're getting your fair share still seems a little foreign. And I hate to keep hammering on that, but one of the first things that I'd like to see done, frankly, is organizing a series of fam tours with some of the leaders of the real estate industry, so they know what you got. It isn't. I think most people still think of Herriman as a bunch of big dry wheat farms and wheel lines, and I think we saw that even with the county during the Olympia Hills discussions. I think an outreach program, and then demanding your fair share, but recognizing that you're stronger as a group of 4 cities than you are individually, and you've got more in common as a group of 4 cities than you do individually. Yeah, I don't know if you were asking me to editorialize, but that's what I did. So.
Oh, that's perfect. Thank you very much, Bob.
Okay, any other questions or comments by the council?
Just a comment myself. Again, want to thank Bob and his team for the effort. I mean, this was if you remember, this was actually a very condensed, quick timeline to try and get the bulk of this information put together. But they did a great job in keeping the group focused, and obviously we couldn't have done it without the participation of everyone that was involved, including several of our residents. Obviously, he already highlighted the key staff members, and then some of the really subject matter experts from other organizations that willingly participated in this. So I think we've got a lot of great information and data now that came out of this that will help, again, for us to focus on some of those key areas moving forward. And I actually really wanted to kind of reiterate, because it's something that honestly I've had a really kind of a hard time wrapping my head, not necessarily wrapping my head around, but realizing that, and it really goes to Bob's last comment, and that is that even though as individual cities we are out there really at times competing with each other to try and land the next big commercial tenant or whatever it is, but again, collectively we're all experiencing the same growth, we're all experiencing the same challenges, and to Bob's point, we have a lot of opportunity to unite forces to help address some of those concerns that we all have, and that makes it a win-win for us. again, at the end of the day, we want to see more, obviously more tax base from commercial development, those types of things. But with that will come additional challenges if we don't work together with those other communities to address those challenges, particularly in the transportation infrastructure. So I appreciated being part of the focus group and those that participated. I think it was a great exercise for us to get some very valuable data out of it. So thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Councilman. One of the things that I didn't really touch on is the impact of internet sales and how sales tax revenues are being distributed. It used to, when I first started in this business, the 1% local option sales tax was distributed 100% on point of sale. So where that sale took place, it all went that way. And then as the census in the 80s shifted so much of the population into the south part of the valley, and particularly Sandy rose up and through the legislature changed that and changed it to where 75% of the sales taxes were distributed based on point of sale, 25% on population. Then later, that got changed again to what we currently have is a 50-50 distribution. About a year and a half, 2 years ago, the question then started coming up more and more with the explosion of internet sales of what was the point of sale. So the legislature pushed through a change in legislation that said on an internet sale, the point of sale is where the product is delivered, instead of where the product was acquired. And I think that's the reason that Herriman is exploding in these sales tax distributions. I can't see how much of it is coming from which outlet, and how much is on population, and how much is on coming from. But I suspect that a substantial part of the growth that you're seeing, the 23% that we could see in July and the 33% we can see in August, is coming from internet sales, that people have something delivered to their home. And I think it's also interesting that South Jordan, which is the gorilla with the big shopping center, I also saw that a number of areas around the state, Murray, that have malls, that they're seeing declines. So Herriman probably should stop apologizing that Riverton outfoxed them in locating retail centers right on your borders. So Herriman residents shop in Riverton rather than Herriman. You're coming on strong, and I think a lot of it has to do with the internet sales. So I think anything that you could do to encourage and facilitate internet sales, and particularly the delivery point being in Herriman, is probably a good economic development strategy.
All right, thank you very much. We appreciate the input. We appreciate all the effort.
Apologize if I took too long.
All right, we'll be moving on to our next item, which are the public hearings for this meeting. Item 8.1, public hearing and consideration of an ordinance approving the transportation master plan. Jonathan. Did we lose you, Jonathan? Do we see that Jonathan is on?
I'm here, Mayor. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
All righty. Oh, all right. I'm unmuted. Sorry, guys. A little rough start. We'll try that again. So last council, we came and we talked about all this master plan, storm drain master plan, water master plan, and in the end, it was presented by the consultants as well as the public hearing was to be continued and to remain open. To date, we received no comments, but obviously would like to solicit any additional questions or comments from council and do our best to answer any of those questions at this time. But before we jump into that, I just wanted to mention that a quick reminder that these master plans represent capital projects that are based on the anticipated land use and zoning as of summer 2019. So this plan will serve as a baseline, to any land use changes since that time for comparison purposes. So maybe this time, if you guys have any questions, I'll do my best to respond.
Any questions from the council at this time? Seeing none, we will move into the public hearing portion of this. I believe this is something that we opened in a previous meeting and we have held open. At this time, just remind the public that if there's anybody that would like to give comment, that the same rules will apply as earlier. But I will look to see, we don't have anybody in the audience, so I'll look to our staff to see if we have any digital. Okay, seeing none, I would accept a motion to close the public hearing on this particular item.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay, made a motion by Sherry. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Second by Steve. I know Clint tried to jump in there, but he was on mute. So,
I was on mute.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Jared,
Yes.
all in favor?
Aye.
All in favor.
Aye.
We're gonna do this differently. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong note. So is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion on the ordinance.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2020-27, adopting the updated transportation master plan. Sorry, Clint.
No, you're fine. I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Jared, we'll try you again.
Yes.
Clint,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Sherry,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. That motion passes. We will move on to item 8.2, public hearing and consideration of an ordinance approving the stormwater master plan. Jonathan.
All right. And hopefully this time I got my camera up, unlike last time. Sorry about that. And it's very similar to last time. So we presented this last time. And so we're, again, just soliciting comments from the council. And again, if there's any, do my best to answer those questions at this time.
Okay. Any questions or comments by the council?
I just wanted to clarify on all these, Jonathan, because there's a few of them. We've not received any comments from the public, right? That we haven't heard about. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. We will move to go back into the public hearing portion for this item. As we don't have anybody in the audience, I will look to our staff to see if we have any digital. We have none. So seeing none, we will accept a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. That motion passes. That hearing is closed. If there's no further discussion, I will take a motion on the ordinance.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2020-28, adopting the updated storm water master plan.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Clint,
Yes.
Stephen,
Yes.
Sherry.
Yes. Oh, I can't, sorry, did you say
That,
Jared
that
or
was
Sherry?
that was for Sherry.
Sorry.
So Sherry
Yes.
and Jared.
Yes.
Thank you. I'll vote yes, that motion passes. We'll move on to item 8.3, public hearing and consideration of an ordinance approving the water master plan. Justin.
So kind of a broken record as Jonathan, but we opened the public hearing last meeting and we kept it open until this meeting. And we've received no public comment. I spoke with Jackie about that a little earlier today. So we'd recommend, I would take any questions that you might have at this time.
Okay, any questions by the council? Seeing none, I'll go into the public hearing portion that we have continued open. Any digital? Okay, seeing none and seeing no one in the audience, we will go ahead and accept a motion to close the public hearing on this item.
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes. We will move on to, if there's no further discussion, I'll move on to the ordinance of this item.
Motion to approve ordinance number 2020-29, adopting the updated water master plan.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Stephen?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
I'll vote yes, that motion passes. We will now move on to item 8.4, public hearing regarding the parks, trails, and open space impact fees, facilities plan, and the parks, trails, and open space impact fee analysis. And we'll turn the time over to Heidi on that one.
That is a mouthful. So just as an update, last time we met on August 12th, Susie and I presented to you the impact fee analysis and facilities plan for the parks, trails, and open space. And I'm coming back to you now at the conclusion of the public hearing for those two items. We've not received any comment that I'm aware of. You also heard from Chase earlier this evening, and he explained to you regarding impact fee enactment. We will schedule these to be brought back to you on September 9th with the enactment for your approval of the IFA and IFFP and the impact fee enactment at one time. As I'm sure you're aware, Chase outlined it. Once you approve it on September 9th, then there's the 90-day waiting period before the new fee would take effect. And just for your information, the date it would take effect, if approved on September 9th, would be December 9th. And that's the update. Do you guys have any comments?
I do have a question, and this one might be for our recorder or possibly our attorney. On this item, is there another hearing for the enactment? So there will still continue to be another opportunity for the public to speak to this item. I'm getting a yes from our staff on that one.
So, Mayor, if I could just clarify, the impact fee enactment is a separate hearing. So today's hearing, you have already opened, I believe.
Yes.
Is that correct? So you've already opened that. You would allow a time for public comment today and potentially close that today. And then there would be a new public hearing for the enactment.
Okay. And what was the what was the plan to bring that one back?
On the 9th.
On the 9th. If our intent was to, my question is as our policy, and this is maybe a question for the council, our practice, not necessarily our policy, but our practice has been that we don't enact an item when it's only been on the agenda for 1 week when there's a public hearing. Is that a concern on this one, that we would have any problems enacting that fee at our next meeting? Being that we've basically had the same thing on our agenda for several weeks now. Are there any concerns about enacting that at our next meeting, or would we want to see that having the public hearing open over a couple of meetings? That's a question for the council.
I'd like to stay with a policy. I like to say if we're gonna work things this way, we're gonna work things this way, and we just simply don't deviate from them. I understand that it probably wouldn't be a big deal, but just so that we're consistent, I just like the idea of having the public hearing and not taking formal action on it until the next meeting. Just because that's been the kind of the status we have set, but that would be my opinion.
I agree with that. Consistency is important.
Okay. And just to clarify, that is a practice, not a policy. We haven't officially made that a policy, but we do base that on practice. So I want to make sure that we're clear with staff of what our intent is, so they understand what is coming at the next meeting. Are there any concerns from staff regarding that plan? I'm seeing a no from our staff. So I would expect that we will see that other item at a future date and holding that for a second meeting. On this one, however, it looks like we have done that. And so if there's no further questions regarding this specific item, 8.4, I would accept a motion, or I would, first off, I need to take the public hearing. So I will look to staff as we have no one in the audience. Do we have any public hearing for 8.4? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion to close the public hearing on this item.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Clint and a second from Sherry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that motion passes. There's no action to take on this item, so we will move on to further action to take on this item for this week. We will move on to our consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
Second.
A second.
Okay, I have a motion from Stephen and a second from Clint. Sherry?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. The consent agenda has been approved as written. Number 10, our discussion and action item for tonight. 10.1, discussion and consideration of a resolution to initiate the process by which Herriman City may consider withdrawal of the municipal territory of Herriman City from the Unified Fire Service Area. Brett.
Mayor and council, as you know, we've had numerous conversations about Unified Fire Service Area, and I want to reiterate, this is no reflection about our service from Unified Fire. This is actually just taking control of our residents' money in Herriman being collected from this area. And if we choose to increase our service, that the council and the mayor will have total control of what level of service they want to have out here in the Herriman area. So with that said, we've had numerous conversations that went before their board of how we separate, and they're going to honor our separation coming January 1, 2021. And between now and then, we've already contacted Science Bank to start our fire impact fee study to get that in place by October-ish. And also the steps Chase and Al will be making to form our tax district and have that approved before the first year as well. This resolution is just solidifying the nod you gave me to give the letter of intent of leaving the Unified Fire Service Area. This makes an official vote. And if there are any questions of me, I'll answer them. And I don't know if Jared wants to make any comment. I know he gave the minutes out to the mayor and council for review on how receptive Unified Fire Service Board was about the separation and the way it's going to be handled.
Any comments? Go ahead, Councilman.
I think we've talked about this kind of ad nauseum, and for the public to reiterate what Brett stated, this just means that we control the money. It doesn't change the service provider. It doesn't change the service. I mean, really nothing that public facing changes in any way, shape, or form. It just gives Herriman City control of the tax funds to pay for the service. That's really it. It's been a long, winding road and a hurried road for our staff and for UFSA staff, but everybody has performed admirably, and we've come to an acceptable resolution on this one. It's time to move forward.
Any further discussion by the council?
I'll just make a quick comment. I mean, obviously, this has been a process with Jared representing us on their board. some, really the dialogue has been going on for, several months now. He's worked, obviously as Riverton made their initial notification that they were going to separate from the district, and has really worked hard to represent Herriman in that process, knowing that we were considering it, and obviously now taking that formal action to do it, and how that affects us, our neighboring communities. But beyond that, so Jared has done a great job representing us in those discussions. So I appreciate his work there on our behalf. I was able to sit in several of those meetings, both in some of the early discussions and then as an observer some of those additional meetings. I just want to commend UFA, Chief Peterson. We've got Dom, Riley, all those that we have a good relationship with, as they have really been very, very transparent, very open, very candid with us through this process, and ultimately very supportive. I think we take this step because we say that now, this really gives us full control over the money. Obviously, that can have potential impacts to how that organization, at least the district side of it, operates, and some of the financial components out there. But through all of that, UFA has been very supportive in supporting us and doing what's best for our community and our residents. And I commend them for that. It's been a process, and there's been some challenges to overcome, but I appreciate the dialogue that's happened and the fact that we're here on very amenable terms of how that separation looks, and the abilities that it gives us really to have a little more control over our community's destiny moving forward. So thanks for everyone's work on that.
Yeah, I just like to make a comment too, because I've been a part of some recent conversations where people have talked about how these actions where we have previously kind of divorced our relationship with the UPD, and that this is a very distinctly different kind of decision. We are not separating our service from the UFA. We are just determining as a city that it is in our best interests to contract directly with the UFA to provide those services, instead of using the UFSA as the middleman for those services. That now we're only responsible for the services provided in our city, whereas part of the UFSA, we may have been in times subsidizing other cities that aren't growing as fast as Herriman and don't have some of the resources that we've been providing. So in the current environment where, and this may not make sense to everybody, but I feel like I need to say it anyway. People are talking about we're looking at ways to save the taxpayers money as somehow justification that we are defunding our first responders. And I just want to unequivocally say how stupid that is. We stand 100% behind our first responders, and they need never doubt that the members of this council will do whatever we need to do to support them and give them the resources that they require to do their jobs effectively. I've just heard some just ridiculous statements being made in the public about that. And I just want to make sure that wise utilization of taxpayers' money has nothing to do with our support for our firefighters and our policemen. End of rant.
End of rant. Steve, I think you mentioned a very good point, really, with your comments there, and that is obviously this isn't a move, but as you mentioned, by any means to decrease the funding that we are spending for our first responder services in our community. And this will be very similar and identical process to when we separated from UPD's, the Slavisla, years ago, and moved that into our own taxing authority. So it was seamless, and our residents didn't notice anything different there. And that'll be the same process we do here, is to protect that funding as it has been collected in the past, 100% for our fire services. That same money will be protected moving forward. It will be moved into our taxing district again, like we did for police. And again, to make sure that that funding is protected, that there is no decrease in funding, and that we can continue to provide those important services for our community moving forward. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
You guys
Thanks
are
for the
awesome.
smile, Sherry.
I couldn't say anything more, but ditto. People will say what people will say, but usually it's just simply because they don't understand. And once they become educated and understand the decision, then it makes sense. So hopefully people will take the time to understand exactly why this is being done. And then I think they'll understand clearly that we definitely support our first responders, and we're grateful for our relationship with UFA and for their services they provide to us, and we are continuing that. So thank you.
What the council may not be aware of is that we actually do have several members of our fire department here in the council meeting, watching and in attendance, in support of their functions that they normally provide to the city. And so they are hearing this, and I would agree with the statements that have been made by the council, that we do support our first responders, and we're grateful for all the efforts you guys put into our communities to keep it safe. So thank you very much. With that, it sounds like we're at a point where I would accept a motion to on this particular resolution.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number R31-2020 to initiate the process by which Herriman City may consider withdrawal of the municipal territory of Herriman City from the Unified Fire Service Area.
I'll second.
I second.
Okay, I have a motion from Sherry, and we're going to take the second from Jared. So on this one, Jared.
Yes.
Hey, Clint.
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Sherry.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. This motion passes. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. That brings us to the end of our general meeting. The next Planning Commission meeting will be on 7 p.m. on September 3rd. Next City Council meeting, our work meeting will be on September 9th, 5:30 p.m. City Council meeting will be at 7 p.m. for the general session. Just a reminder that we do continue to have our Hunger Herriman Food Truck Roundup at 5 p.m. Our next one is at 5 p.m. on the 31st, right outside City Hall. We do have also on August 31st, the Herriman Live Talent Show at Crane Park. And then through September 15th, just a reminder that we are still doing that Herriman City Shop Around, where you receive those Herriman bucks in the mail, that if you spend some money, City will help pitch in some funds too, and help make some of those purchases as some relief for the situation that we're in, and to help our local businesses. So please take advantage of that before September 15th, when those will expire. With that, I will accept a motion to move into closed session. Guess we're just doing
motion
adjourn then,
temporarily. Go ahead. Go ahead, Steve.
Motion to temporarily recess City Council meeting to convene in closed session for the purpose to discuss the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property as provided by Utah Code annotated section 52-4-205.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Clint.
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Sherry.
Yes.
Jared.
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. That motion passes. For those that are attending digitally, we will be moving into closed session, which means this streaming of our meeting will cease. We will come briefly back into a general session, but the only action that will happen is that we will close the general meeting at that point. So we will not be re-streaming this for the rest of the night. So thank you for your participation, and we hope that you participate in our meetings in the future. Thank you very much.
Mayor.
Yes.
Mayor. The staff innocent. Never mind. I just got the email.
There you
Answered
go.
my own.
They've got it. They're on top of it. We're going to take a 5-minute break just to give them an opportunity to get everything switched over and taken care of. So see you guys in a couple minutes. Hey, thank you guys. Appreciate you being here.